everything. You need accuracy in order to do some of the things that Eamon and his staff do with GIS. And when you're using commercially available or otherwise available products, you just don't have that. So the desire was always there to fly again. The thing is, flying is expensive. It is something that every year you'd look and you'd say, well, let's push it another year, let's push another year. We'd work with county staff, and the same situation would come up, let's just wait. Well, the county, Ellis County, did decide to fly using funds that they had in 2023. And at that time, they had decided they were going to fly at 6 inches resolution, and we preferred the 3-inch, so they allowed us to do a buy-up for our footprint to go from 6-inch to 3-inch, which is what we've had from 2012, in our original flight. So not only the upgrade to the 3-inch for the footprint was included, but obliques, which are side shots, were also included. And I'll show you an example of that in a second here. So I'm going to stay within the presentation in order to keep the slides moving smoothly, but I welcome you to get on your iPads and your other devices to follow along or play around at your own leisure. But in order to get to our GIS web mapping site, you go to the City of Hayes website and you see down in the lower area the GIS map. So you'll click on that, and then once you get there, you will have another link for online city-county mapping. Once you're there, you go off of our website. Since this is city and county, there's a unique a portal that you go through. One of the things that Eamon is going to look at in the future is a little different branding to maybe mesh more with the city and county websites, but at this time, it is its own unit. So on the left, you see there's a portion called web mapping that you go to, and then from there you use the desktop entrance if you're using a PC, or the multi-platform entrance if you're using a mobile device. When you get in, the 3-inch aerial photography that was flown in 2023 is the base layer. So you will click, and or you don't have to click. When you load, it is the base layer. But when you zoom in, this is an example of what I would like to speak about when it comes to resolution. On the left side, you have Google Maps, but it doesn't matter. It could be in the state of Kansas area imagery or anything else. You can see that there's no detail compared to what we have on the right. You can actually see fan blades on the air conditioner. This is a picture of City Hall. Fan blades on the air conditioners. You could see street pavement markings. You can see down in the corner what is a refuse can as opposed to just a dot. So 3-inch resolution is fantastic. We were glad that we could buy up with the project with the county. The next portion I want to talk about is the obliques, which is really the coolest part of this, in my opinion, other than having new development on the new flight. Once you get and zoom in, if you click on a parcel, you'll be presented with some options, and one of those is oblique imagery. And when you click on that, you'll come into a different viewer, and this is City Hall again. You'll see that there's a north, south, east, and west perspective. It's cool, you can just say that, but if you think about it, police and fire, when they do pre-planning, it's nice for them to know where doors and windows are. Let's say there's a police situation and they are coming upon a SWAT thing, and they want to know where the windows are in case somebody comes piling out of there or something. Those are the types of things that oblique views can be beneficial for. In addition to the county does things that they do when there may be some things that they can do with the aerial photography that would save them from driving and looking at something. So, very quick presentation. Are there any questions? If it's technical, Eamon is here. If it's generic, I'm here.
That is so cool.
It really is.
It is.
Really is cool.
My yard looks terrible in high resolution.
Yeah. I appreciate the update.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate the cookies.
There might be a mixed, Bronco one in there. I don't know.
Oh no, that one will taste.
And, I will say, didn't Dynasty get canceled?
It did, but like I said, it may be coming back. It's just a rumor. We'll see.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good luck. Next item on the agenda, runway 4-22 reconstruction design engineering agreement. Jamie.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jamie Salter, Director of Hayes Regional Airport. Reconstruction of the crosswind runway 422 is included in our ACIP with the FAA. It is considered the highest priority as far as any of the projects we have listed. The FAA typically determines what prioritizes or takes priority over other projects, and typically runways, pavement projects, those types of things rank the highest. Lochner was chosen as our airport engineering consultant for the project and has prepared an engineering agreement to provide design services required for the project by the FAA. Cost is $485,000 and is eligible for 90% funding through the FAA. Design scope will include all the traditional aspects, development of construction plans, contract documents. There's various engineering design reports that the FAA requires, and then as well as the formal bidding of the project. This is runway 422. It was constructed in 2003. It does have a relatively low weight-bearing capacity of 12,500 pounds. That is probably part of why we ended up here overloading over the years. We have a lot of aircraft that come in that are a lot heavier than that. We're not controlled. We don't have a control tower, so it is hard to govern that to some extent. But it's either at capacity, at 90% capacity, is overloaded with aircraft operations. These are pictures showing the examples. This here on the, oops, there we go. This is, you see the spider webbing. Those actually will crumble and can be ingested into aircraft engines, or you'll have prop blasts that will shoot those as projectiles, any of that debris that crumbles off of that pavement. If we've got maintenance workers, things like that, accessing that area, mowing, things like that, that can shoot off and become a projectile and obviously be dangerous for those accessing the area. Also, as far as ingesting into engines, it can damage the aircraft as well. So important that we don't have that. That's actually caused by a chemical reaction when the pavement was put in. There are we'll ensure that that obviously doesn't happen, but I think standards are considerably different than they were when this went in even 20 years ago. Middle and end, I wanted to point out, these are longitudinal cracking, so the FAA doesn't just say, hey, you get to have a runway reconstruct if you want one. So this is longitudinal cracking. These are running, that one on the right-hand side is running, over 2,000 feet or down the runway. Those are multiple areas that we have on the runway that are like that. The FAA does a determination as far as rehab versus reconstruct, what's most cost effective. And because of the amount of panels that have to be touched, rehab is not considered cost effective. They would not cost share in it. The longitudinal cracking, this one I wanted to point out, back in here, this actually is caved into itself. You can't really tell, it's hard to see the grade. But back in here, this is caved into itself, each side of this, and then back here it's actually sunk. So this panel right back here is at grade, and then it's sunk back into itself in front of it. There are strict guidelines as far as leaving pavement open, what we are actually supposed to. We have to inspect it daily, and if we get outside of those standards, we have to close it. So that's actually what ended up happening. I've got a better picture of it so you can see it here in a couple slides. But we had to close it last year from February to April because of that. We haven't had to yet. Again, we inspect it daily. We're paying special attention to that because if it does fall out of compliance, our Part 139 regulations that allow SkyWest to come in require us to do just that. SkyWest won't use this, but that's how Part 139 works. So all of those regulatory compliance issues are applied to any of the paved areas that we have in the airfield. Let's see here. Runway lighting and signage for this runway was replaced in 2020. That will remain in place. Nothing needs to be touched on that aspect. Last week, Mayor Musil had questioned at the airport. I already kind of touched on this, but if the FAA actually comes out and does that pavement inspection, or if we do that, but again, we're tasked with doing that daily, so we should pick up on that, and that's the entire point of this, to ensure that we catch it before it becomes a hazard, or, again, can close it or address it immediately should anything like this come up. So this is taxiway, same type of thing. This especially shows that ASR that will crumble off. This is the intersection of the taxiway and the crosswind runway. A ton of cracking. We've done what we can to maintain the best we can, but what you see in this area, not necessarily, we do see some of that longitudinal cracking, but it's most of that ASR is what it's called, where that crumbling and spider webbing, and again, you could almost just brush off the top layer of the concrete, and that actually is probably one of the most hazardous to aircraft. So this is adjacent to the crosswind runway. We worked with the FAA because of the state of the pavement. It's going to be closed anyway. So we worked with the FAA to incorporate this part into the project. The pavement layout on this one will actually change a little bit. There's new airport design standards, so the geometry at the turning points, the pivot points for that aircraft will actually widen just a little bit. It will still maintain 35 foot wide, which is what it is now, but a little bit of pavement change there, which will require some of the lighting and signage. It's very, very minor what we're touching there, but that will require that to be relocated. This is the crosswind runway. So 3 inches up or down is what we have at a 45-degree angle, which I know sounds silly, but it is very, very technical as far as, straightforward, black and white. So when we had to close this was a crosswind runway last year in February. When we caught it, it was over 3 inches. So a lot of heaving. This is an example of one. This is actually, if you see, it looks white up top there. It's one of our pavement markings. Those pavement markings can actually absorb sunlight, and they actually get hotter or colder depending on what temperature is, and it causes that type. So we see a lot of that cracking, a lot of that crumbling, a lot of that longitudinal issues, and heaving especially because of that. Last week, Commissioner Barrick asked if the runway was doomed from the start because of materials used. To some extent it was. Obviously your concern is longevity when we put in a new one. That's going to be taken into account. But again, standards are completely different now than they were there then. I know it's hard to believe because it is such a restrictive environment, but it was a lot more lax back then than it was now. So materials are different. They have additives. They use different to ensure that, especially that ASR doesn't happen, that chemical reaction, but also under pavement markings, they'll reinforce those. They'll make that concrete thicker so that it's not as likely to do this. Essentially, those key points that we have where we see at least the worst of the failures, like in between crosswind and runway, which I have a better picture of that coming up too, but they'll reinforce some of those areas that might see heavier aircraft that may taxi from main runway to taxiway on the crosswind runway. So this is project scope for reconstruction. I do want to point out last week, I want to make sure that it's understood that the main runway, which is runway 1634, will not be touched. The pavement will not be touched. So that remains in place. Nothing will be reconstructed on that, but it does run all the way up to the main runway. Pavement strength for that crosswind runway when it is reconstructed will be increased to 30,000 pounds. That will suit us well for the life of the pavement. That they determine that based on what type of fleet mix we have. There's only so heavy of aircraft that can use that runway, but it seems like that determination wasn't necessarily made back when. I don't think they anticipated the aircraft operations that we'd have. I think there's been a lot of growth, and obviously 20 years ago, it's a lot different than it was then.
Jamie, is the main runway up to this standard now?
Oh yes, it was reconstructed in 2012 is when it started. I think it was completed in 2014. So it is different than the crosswind runway. Different type of base, different, yes, it was new standards that they used for that. Like I said, taxiway geometry points will change. The yellow there is the taxiway. Very, very limited lighting and signage, so it will need to be relocated because it has to be so far away from the pavement so aircraft can taxi through there and not hit an engine or wingtips or something like that on that lighting and signage. So it has to be relocated so far out from the center line. Again, taxiway will be 35 feet wide. Main runway, the FAA, again, just like they require us to justify reconstruction over rehab, they also require us to justify the length and width that we have in the runway. So a lot of times airports will come back in with their crosswind runways. They may not be able to keep the length or width because their aircraft operations don't justify that use. They don't need that. Typically it's in length. They don't need that long, but we were able to justify it. So we will keep it same dimensions. Again, project scope will not include the pavement on the main runway, but it will require work in its safety area. So there's certain areas that if we are working in that requires the main runway to be closed. I know that Mayor Musil and Commissioner Reuter inquired as to the operational impact of that. That will be, typically that's scoped completely separate as its own individual section of pavement that we'll touch. They won't do anything more than that, but they'll try to wipe that out as fast as they can. I think that our airport consultant, I mean, they're used to working in the airport environment, so they very much so understand that as far as commercial service airports, how important that is to ensure that that main runway is open as quickly as it can be. So we'll do whatever we can. A lot of that will be determined by the FAA as well. So we can say we want to do this, but they may say we won't let you do this. So we'll do our best. We have had a lot of pre-design meetings and kickoff meetings with them, so they're well aware of what we're doing. And we're not reinventing the wheel here, so they're very familiar with how this goes and how to knock it out as quickly as possible. And then just so you are all aware, when I bring back award of bid and construction inspection, that would point out specifically that scope so that you all would have an understanding of what that timeline looks like.
Jamie, can I ask you a question on that last slide?
Yes.
Excuse me, sorry. I'm just curious, the taxiway and the crosswind runway, are their weight capacities the same?
No, actually, the taxiway has a stronger weight-bearing capacity. It's not the same. They don't reflect those the same as main runway. I mean, what a pilot's looking at as far as can I land on this runway, because they don't want to be nose deep in pavement because their aircraft is too heavy. So
Okay.
they make sure that the taxiway can carry the weight of main runway and crosswind runway. And when I was talking about that reinforcement right in here, so we have, it doesn't necessarily happen from this way, but if there's aircraft landing from the north to the south, they will actually, a lot of them don't need the whole length, so they'll be slowed down here and they'll actually taxi off right here on the crosswind and then flip around and go back to the ramp. So they will reinforce that section actually in between, because that's where you see a lot of that. And again, it's low weight bearing capacity. Most of them, I think, live in a world where that's not typical. So they're expecting it. They don't even think to check. You know, we'll try to keep them off. We don't ever authorize anything, any type of weight bearing limits that we have on the runway are hard ones, because the FAA won't cost share if we authorize anything. Again, not towered, so we don't know what's happening at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
But do the best we can there. But yes, taxiway will be capable of bearing the weight of both the crosswind runway, any aircraft that typically can operate there, and then same with the main runway.
Thank you.
This is tentative schedule for the project. Design will be completed this year, with the construction to be completed or at least start spring of 2025, with the anticipation of it, that project being wrapped up next year. And then due to the total cost of the project requiring grant funding for multiple years, FAA reimbursement of that 90% will likely occur over a few of their fiscal years, so 2024 to 2026. Their fiscal year starts October 1 of 2025 would be their 2026 fiscal year. So we wouldn't be looking at we may not even be done with the project, honestly, by then. They may be coming up on winter trying to finish up. So shouldn't be too much of an issue there.
Jamie, when it comes to bids, are local bidders able to bid on FAA?
Yeah, as long as they want to. A lot of them, we've had more of an interest, especially in building projects. A lot of times they won't touch them because they require so much administrative work. Yeah. But we encourage it and try to be as patient as we can, because obviously the more bidders we have, the more competitive it is. Best product and cost you'll get for that. So, but yes, anyone can. I mean, they just have to, and that's why the FAA, I think, requires us to have an airport engineering consultant, because a lot of times they're holding their hand. I mean, some that have never done an AIP project, they guide them a lot in that. So, Lochner, airport's engineering consultant for this project, has presented a scope of services and fee to accomplish the design and engineering for the project. Costs for these services is $485,000 and is eligible for the 90% funding through the FAA. Remaining city share of $48,000 will be funded from the Airport Improvement Fund. And commission has the following options. Approve consultant agreement for design engineering services from Lochner in the amount of $485,300 and authorize the city manager to execute the FAA grant agreement when offered, provide staff with alternate direction or reject the project. And this is the action requested. I will stand for any questions.
I move approval to authorize the city manager to execute consultant agreement for design engineering services with Lochner in the amount of $485,300, with the city's share of $48,530 coming from the Airport Improvement Fund, and execute the FAA grant agreement when offered.
Second that.
Motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Reuter. Any comments or questions?
My only comment is what a great job you do on this, Jamie. You haven't been in the job all that long, but you've grown in this job exponentially. You do a really good job.
I love it. I
Thank
can't
you very
imagine
much.
anything else.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
I would agree. You do a great job explaining what you're doing out there.
Even if it's not fun, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
I just
me
want to
can-
say, Chad, you need to stand up here a second.
My cookies?
I'm just saying, I'm utilizing the city map, and I went over to the airport, zipped down on the runway, and I can see the longitudinal craft on each side of the
Get up
thing.
here.
But the problem is when I really zoom in really tight, I'm not sure I can get the 1 inch. I got the oblique view. I'm not sure I can see the 1 inch drive.
Yeah. They couldn't. They.
We didn't have enough money to go one.
Great job to both of you. Any other comments? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, public hearing date for the neighborhood
That too.
revitalization plan expansion. Let's try that again. Wow.
Good
go
afternoon, Jared Kuckelman, Management Analyst. So we'll be talking about the NRP expansion public hearing date. So some background first. Hayes first established the NRP in 2002. It's been updated a few different times since then, but the most recent was back in 2017. The NRP works as an incentive by providing property tax rebates for 10 years to property owners who make improvements that raise the assessed values of the property. The point of this is to encourage new construction or the rehabilitation and redevelopment of existing properties that might not otherwise have occurred. As the NRP is currently structured, residential properties are required to make a minimum $25,000 investment to receive a 65% property tax rebate, while commercial properties are required to invest a minimum of $50,000 for a 95% rebate. So to clarify on the questions that were asked about this last week, there aren't any provisions in state statute that set what these look like. It is entirely set locally, so it can be as low or as high as we want, depending on what we would want the incentive and the program to look like. And the way this current formula is set up, it was set back in 2017 with the last expansion.
Does that include time frame too?
Yeah, well, it was 10 years back then. It's always been 10 years, but the amount of the rebate over that 10 years has changed. Right. And so it's currently those percentages for the full 10 years. Prior to 2017, it changed over the 10 years, and it was decided to just keep it the same over 10 years the last time.
It used to adjust every year,
I
right?
think it like started at 90 and then it went to 80 and then it went to 70. And so the city commission, when it was last expanded, said, let's just keep it one amount for 10 years. And that's where they ended up at the 65.
Thank you.
That just makes Kim's job easier.
We're all about Kim being
That's
easier.
what we're here for.
Here for you, Kim.
So one of the most critical factors in eligibility for NRP is location within or outside the defined area. So on the left is the expansion map that was used in 2017, while on the right is the proposed expansion map for today with the new areas shown in blue. While the expansion in 2017 was drawn to reflect the build-out of the city in 1965, the map for today has been drawn to reflect much of the build-out of Hayes in 1980. So just a few examples here of how the NRP has been a part of some successful projects in recent years. Here's a major commercial remodel example from the corner of Vine Street and 8th with the liquor store that recently opened. Another commercial remodel example is the Fort Tavern and Bar, which was remodeled from the old Wild Rose. A residential example is at 211th East 17th Street, with the original building demolished and then redeveloped with a duplex. And then another residential example is the site of 7th and Oak, which was rebuilt with a new apartment building owned by Mike Graham. So one of the big reasons we're considering an NRP expansion now is the ability to benefit properties throughout the city that are aging, and because of this are theoretically ripe for renovation and redevelopment. This reasoning was used in 2017 by expanding to reflect the build-out of the city in 1965, and the same reasoning can be used today to expand to reflect the build-out of the city in 1980. Such an expansion would include many residential and commercial properties across the northern areas of the city that could benefit from the use of NRP, and this includes many properties along the areas of North Vine, which are not tax increment financing or TIF eligible. As discussed previously, the proposed expansion has also been designed to preemptively include many properties that are not yet 50 years old, but could soon be approaching that age within the next few years in order to prevent the need for multiple future expansion efforts. And then finally, a reason to consider an expansion now is that increasing the number of eligible properties could potentially also increase awareness and popularity of the incentive. This was seen after the expansion in 2017, so hopefully something could be seen again now. So once again, this is the proposed map.
Jared, can I ask a quick question? Can you go back one slide, please? Maybe that answers it. 72 properties have utilized NRP since 2017, 45 between there. So since 2000, okay, I got it. I'll let you finish. I'll get
just
into
say,
discussion.
it was 45 total from all of the years from 2002 to 2017, and in the 6 years since 2017, it's been 72.
Right.
So
Thank you.
It's been almost double in just 6 years, while over the 15 years
Like
it was.
3 a year for 15 years, and then
And then boom.
yep.
Here's the map. As part of the proposed changes, there are a couple small changes being proposed to the official NRP document and application guidelines. These changes were requested by staff at the county who do the bulk of the work in administering the property tax rebates. The current application fee for NRP is currently $100, which it has been for many years. And so it has been requested to increase this to kind of reflect the amount of work that goes into administering the rebates. So we propose raising that fee to $200. And then the other change being proposed is changing the rebate formula for properties that are on the National or State Historic Registry. These properties currently receive a 100% NRP rebate, and it's being proposed to change this to 95% to align with the percentage that's currently received by commercial properties and help provide some consistency in that regards. And so these changes have already been incorporated into a draft revised neighborhood revitalization plan document, which can then be enacted once the resolution has been passed and made official. So we're discussing this here today as part of the process that is required in order to amend the NRP. State statute requires the holding of a public hearing to allow residents to weigh in on the proposed changes. This public hearing has to be set by a vote by the governing body, and it requires consecutive weeks of publication at least once for 2 weeks in a newspaper of general circulation. And so in order to ensure compliance with the statute, we'll publish notice in both the Hayes Daily News and on the City of Hayes website. We're proposing February 22nd as the date of the public hearing, and once the hearing has been held, a resolution can then be approved by the City Commission. The resolution will officially be in action to adopt the revised neighborhood revitalization plan and amendments contained within, which will include the expansion area and the proposed administrative changes. After that, the County Commission and School Board will then also be asked to pass resolutions approving the changes, and this is because of the interlocal agreement that all three entities participate in with the property tax rebates. Both the County Commission and School Board have been made aware of the proposed changes after recent presentations by me, and they gave positive feedback, so that's allowed us to move forward to today. I've mentioned this before, but I'll make sure to say it again. The NRP works as a property tax rebate. It's not an exemption. So this means that it's similar to TIF and that no entity, whether the city, county, or school district, give up any existing revenues. It's just the incremental increase in property values that go towards the rebate according to the property percentage formula that's been set. So these are the options before you today. And this is the action being requested. Should you choose to move forward, this item will move forward straight to the February 22nd meeting when the public hearing would then be held, and then pending the outcome of the hearing, you would then be asked to approve the resolution enacting the revised neighborhood revitalization plan.
I move to set a public hearing for February 22nd, 2024, to hear comments regarding the proposed neighborhood revitalization plan expansion and authorize city staff to advertise notice of the hearing in the Hayes Daily News once a week for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the hearing date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Reuter, second by Commissioner Cunningham. I have a question on the historical. Would you go back to that slide? And I just don't remember when we changed this. I just felt like Toby, there was a reason why we had the historical different. I mean, can you explain why, or do you have any clue? Was there any documentation on why we left it that way?
I don't have any idea why it was set the way it was, other than probably just an idea that historic properties tend to have more regulations surrounding them, whether it's from the state or national level, in terms of what can be done to those properties.
Right.
So I imagine the idea was that putting the rebate formula at 100% was giving it a little bit added extra incentive to help people who own those sorts of properties to work on those. I imagine in the years since, according to county staff, there hasn't been a ton of usage on that side of things in terms of historical properties that are trying to take advantage of it. And so those that do, it's just easier from an administrative side they can easily keep track if they know it's just 95% versus having to check 100 versus 95 or 65 or whatever.
Well, the only reason I'm asking, because we have had a lot of, I know downtown there's been a lot of, reconstruction, and I've been told by the developers that it wouldn't be possible without the historical funding. And I'm just wondering, is this going to stymie that? I mean, I know it's 5%, but
I don't think it's gonna hurt it. This was put in place, I think, with the original NRP creation, and that was before most of the work that's gone on downtown had taken place. So I think they saw a daunting task and wanted every incentive in their toolbox they could get. But now there's still a lot of historic buildings down there, but we're kind of picking at the edges of,
Right.
What can be a wholesale renovation that could lead to something like this. So I don't think the 5% is going to make that much of a difference. Plus, those building owners are now pretty savvy about getting some state credits
right.
from the Historical Society. So that'll actually probably be more of an incentive than the 5%.
Do we know how many historical properties have taken advantage of the NRP?
I could verify that information.
Sure.
Because I know we have a list of all the properties that have applied, certainly within the past few years. So that could be followed up. And
Can they use that on
I-
top of the, I'm sorry.
I have a question along the same lines. I'd like to know the number per year after 2017, those 5 years. And the reason I ask is I've actually started taking pictures I don't know why I've started noticing it. There are so many homes in our infill area that are having things done to them right now. It's unbelievable. People are upgrading. You see new siding on house after house after house. And I'm just wondering how many of those are really taking advantage of this, and if there are some that don't know it. And that would be something I'd really like to make sure that we're communicating appropriately, because it's enough that, and I drive all over town, it's enough that it's caught my attention over the last actually starting in the fall is when I first started noticing it. So I'll just keep taking pictures as they come up, and I've got a lot of them.
Well, that brings a good point up. When we market this out, who do we market it to? Just the homeowners, or do we let the...
it's a very short application, but there are some people who are uninterested even in filling out a single page of paper to fill it out to do it. So they've said that sometimes is an obstacle with some people, but they're always doing their best. And they have said that since we've been talking about this, awareness has even increased some, and they've had some more calls just as this has been reported on in the public. So like I said, hopefully just the act of expanding the area and making people more aware that it exists can help raise awareness of it.
When the commission expanded the district last time, we made a concerted effort to notify banks that loan money for houses and realtors in hopes of maybe selling a house that, you could put some money into and get a rebate. And we plan on doing the same thing this time. Assuming this all gets approved by the three governing bodies, we'll do another push to get that out.
You guys really do think everything.
Main thing though is Sandy wants to know what it takes to get her home as a
I'm
historical
working on it.
property, so that she can get that
I'm almost
95%.
old enough to get there.
We done?
No, I appreciate everything you
Yeah.
guys have done for it, so.
Yeah,
I think
it's really cool.
anything like this that helps revitalize the properties in the community makes us look good and makes us all feel better about our community.
Did we start talking about this when we started talking about strong towns?
A little bit, yeah. I can tell you the one of the genesis of this, well, it was twofold. Girl Hayes brought up, but then Colin was Colin mentioned that, hey, we've made all these improvements in North Vine. We have a lot of older properties that could use some improvement. They aren't TIF eligible, so maybe this is a way to help do that. So
Thank you, Colin.
good idea.
Yeah,
think-
and
I
the
really think it's
pictures
great.
of the examples,
Yeah.
they speak volumes, so,
They do.
yeah.
And looking at Mason's house here on the map,
We got a new
might
toy.
he need
might
to
need to
mow?
take advantage of this too.
It's
He has
it's a
twins
demo
coming.
remodel.
Well, thank you for reaching out to the school board and the county. Appreciate that very much. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Commission inquiries and comments. Mr. Barrett.
Oh, I mentioned this, that I never thought that I would hear this from somebody, from a citizen come and visit me. And I had somebody today that said, we need to put another roundabout in the city. And I wasn't sure I'd ever hear that, but they said that where the 183 and the bypass come together, that intersection, which we just already spent a lot of money on getting the Vine Street fixed. But they've seen enough things happen there just in the last week or two. They said, that really ought to be a roundabout. It would make it a lot safer.
So when we were designing the Vine Street rebuild, for the most part, it was a curb-to-curb rebuild. And we floated the idea to KDOT, knowing they had a mill and overlay project on the bypass coming to that, and asked if they'd be interested in cost sharing to put a roundabout in there, and they weren't, and it was very much cost prohibitive. The roundabout itself would cost almost as much or more than it cost to redo Vine Street. So
Vine, yeah.
at that point, we just kind of dropped it. But we had the same thought. It's a great spot for one.
It is actually, it really is.
Commissioner Cunningham?
I just wanted to say that I had the pleasure of meeting with Brandon Hines, the director at the library this week. And I just want to remind everybody how lucky we are to have such a valuable asset in this community. I've always thought the library is amazing, but seeing things in person and the upgrades and the plans for the future, just a reminder that we're very fortunate what we have. So,
Great library.
Yeah.
Commissioner Reuter?
Yeah, we had a pretty good turnout last Saturday for the first legislative coffee series that the chamber hosts, and got to hear some updates from Senator Billinger and Representative Rajas on what's going on up in Topeka. Sounds like they're doing quite a bit of work up there, so hopefully there's some good that comes out of their labor up there. Got to speak with them, give them some updates on all the great things that are happening here. So we're excited. Lots of good things happening.
I don't have anything.
I just want to reiterate, we had some great news on our water project this week. Had kind of a fun thing. A gentleman, Bob Albers, was the mayor here, I believe, in 1994. I believe he was the mayor when they bought the property in the R9 Ranch, and came in and congratulated the city commission. And like I told him, those people before us started this, and we're just helping finish it. So it's exciting for our city, and it's amazing how many people, when they see this in Hayes Post, they're surprised we're still doing it. They thought it was just done years ago, and they don't realize how much work's been put into it. So kudos to you, water department, everybody that's been on this for many years. And we're not done yet, but it's pretty darn close, and it's been a real exciting week around here, so.
Mayor, if I could,
Yes, ma'am.
I really want to thank you for commenting so often on the previous commission and what they did on this. Toby and I were having our normal lunch this weekend. Joe Glassman stopped by the table and reminded us that he was one of those that signed the original document. And so to hear that and how long it's been, they are, all the commissioners, the old commissioners are still in tune about it for sure. So it was pretty exciting.
Absolutely. A lot of work's been, I mean, I was talking to my wife right before we got here, it's taken 30 years. It's amazing it takes that long for something this good to happen,
It's
but
unreal.
it's going to be worth the wait, we hope. And so other than that, I have a request for a executive session. I'm not sure how many minutes we need.
I think 15, 20 minutes. I move we have, go into executive session for not to exceed 20 minutes.
And it would include just the city commission to discuss personnel matters. All in favor of the motion? Oh, I guess we need a second.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Reuter. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Ring at 10 a.m. I can't talk today.